The storm cracked over the ruins of Saqqara, lightning illuminating the half-buried tomb that had been sealed for millennia. Beneath layers of sand, stone, and forgotten incantations, a presence stirred. Not a ghost, not a god, something more. Something eternal. Imhotep was awake again. For over 4,000 years, he had moved through history like a whisper. A priest, a scholar, a physician, an architect, his name had been carved into eternity, but the world only knew fragments of his truth. The pyramids he built were not mere tombs, they were vessels, conduits of something far beyond stone and mortar. He had cracked the code of mortality, not in death, but in the art of passing between bodies. It was always the same. The ritual of the Black Lotus. A preparation of oils and incantations. The binding of knowledge to the next vessel. A willing disciple, one chosen from the ever-growing cult that had followed him through centuries, the Order of the Serpent Sun. They had existed in the shadows since the first dynasty, guiding pharaohs, shaping empires, embedding themselves into the folds of history like ink and parchment. Every few decades, Imhotep would shed his vessel like a snake sloughing off its skin. The host would wither, its essence drained, while his mind, his soul, would take root in a new form. He had been a vizier in Mesopotamia, a scholar in the House of Wisdom during the Abbasid Caliphate, a scientist in Renaissance Florence. He had moved through time unnoticed, rewriting the fate of civilizations from within. And now, he was here. In the modern world. The headquarters of the Order of the Serpent Sun was hidden beneath a museum in Cairo, accessible only through a passage known to a select few. Hooded figures gathered around a single figure lying on an obsidian slab, surrounded by flickering flames and the scent of burning myrrh. The vessel, a young billionaire, Marcus Hale, had offered himself willingly. He had been one of the world's greatest minds, a man obsessed with longevity, artificial intelligence, and the nature of consciousness itself. But Marcus had realized, too late, that his own research paled in comparison to what Imhotep had already mastered. The ritual had begun. Golden hieroglyphs, unseen by the untrained eye, lined the walls, glowing as the incantations filled the chamber. A black scorpion was crushed into the ritual oil. The scent of time-worn secrets filled the air. Imhotep's voice did not belong to the man lying on the slab, and yet it did. It echoed through the bones of those who bore witness. "You have given your body for the great work," he intoned. Marcus gasped as the final words were spoken. His eyes widened, his body convulsed. And then, stillness. A moment later, his body shuddered. Fingers twitched. The breath that came next was not his. Imhotep sat up, flexing his new hands, his expression serene. He looked down at his reflection in a bowl of dark liquid, examining the unfamiliar face. The vessel was strong. Young. Full of potential. He turned to the gathered disciples. "The world is shifting," he said, his voice smooth, calm, eternal. "It is time to move forward." In the world outside, no one knew that Imhotep walked among them. His cult had infiltrated corporations, universities, governments. They worked in silence, securing his place in the world, expanding his reach. Technological advancements in AI, brain mapping, and synthetic biology were simply echoes of what he had long understood. But now, they served his purpose. A new age was dawning. He had seen the fall of empires, the rise of kings, the birth of religions. But this time, he would not have to hide. He smiled, stepping out into the neon-lit streets. The world was finally ready. "You said. Continue." ChatGPT said. The city hummed with life, glowing billboards, the low rumble of distant traffic, the soft chime of notifications from countless devices. Imhotep pulled his coat tight around his new body, inhaling deeply, as if tasting the air itself. "This world, it is mine now." He walked with purpose, his mind already weaving new threads of influence. The Order of the Serpent Sun had secured footholds in the world's most powerful institutions: finance, media, technology. They had shaped entire industries, influencing those who thought themselves visionaries but were merely pawns on his cosmic board. But something was different this time. This world was faster, smarter. It had tools he had never imagined, systems that could amplify his will beyond the reach of any pharaoh or emperor before him. He had always relied on the slow, meticulous shaping of history. Now, he could touch a key and reach millions. He could whisper into a machine, and the entire world would listen. His disciples had laid the groundwork for his ascension into this new age. One of them, a woman named Dr. Layla Hassan, was waiting for him at the entrance of a sleek, high-rise building. She wore no ceremonial robes, no outward symbol of her allegiance. She was a leading neuroscientist, respected in her field, her discoveries lauded by the medical community. "How do you feel, Master?" she asked as he approached. Imhotep flexed his fingers. The vessel was strong, but he could feel the residual memories of Marcus Hale drifting like faint echoes in his mind. He had taken hundreds of bodies, yet each time, there was an adjustment period, a moment of realignment. "Powerful," he replied simply. "Where are we on the neural transfer project?" Layla smiled, leading him inside. "Ahead of schedule. The AI simulations are running smoothly. Within a year, we will no longer need willing vessels." Imhotep's gaze sharpened. No longer need vessels? The thought intrigued him. For centuries, he had transferred his consciousness through ancient rites, relying on biological vessels to sustain him. But if his essence, his mind, could be stored, replicated, and reinserted into any form of his choosing, he could become eternal in ways even the ancients never dreamed. They rode the elevator in silence, ascending beyond the glow of the city into a penthouse lab that overlooked Cairo. Screens flickered with data, brain scans, AI neural networks, bioengineered constructs. The walls were lined with containment chambers, each holding a form in stasis, artificial bodies, nearly perfected. Layla gestured to one. "We are almost there. Soon, you won't need to consume another soul. You will simply transition seamlessly." Imhotep stepped closer, touching the cold glass of one of the chambers. Inside was a body, perfectly sculpted, ageless, neither young nor old. A being without flaws, without limits. A body that would not decay. For the first time in centuries, he felt something close to excitement. "You have done well," he said. "The Order will reward you." Layla lowered her head in reverence. "We serve the Eternal One." He turned to the city beyond, watching the flashing lights, the constant movement of billions of lives. Once, he had ruled from the shadows, whispering into the ears of kings. But this world offered something greater than thrones and crowns. It offered dominion over all minds. Imhotep smiled. The ancient gods had been feared because they were unseen, unknowable. But he would not remain hidden. He would rise as the first true god of the modern age, not through myth, but through science. The world was not ready for him. But soon, it would kneel. The city pulsed beneath him, a vast web of minds, networks, and systems ripe for manipulation. Imhotep had always ruled from the shadows, but this age was different. The pharaohs had needed armies, the emperors had needed legions, but he needed only influence. The first step was control. Not of bodies. Not of governments. But of minds. He turned back to Layla, his most trusted disciple in this new world. "The neural transfer project, how soon until we can test it?" Layla hesitated for the first time, her fingers twitching at her sides. "We have encountered resistance." Imhotep narrowed his eyes. "From whom?" She sighed. "A faction within the Order. The Old Guard. They believe we should preserve the ritual. that your consciousness must remain bound to the biological cycle. He exhaled slowly, disappointment washing over him. Fools! Did they not see? Did they not understand? He had played the role of priest, vizier, healer, builder, each time bound by the limits of the physical. But this was the future. Who leads them? Layla hesitated, then whispered the name. High Priest Aknot. Aknot. The name was ancient. One of the oldest among his followers. He had been with Imhotep through the rise and fall of empires, a man who had walked with him through the burning of Alexandria, who had whispered the old incantations in the tombs of lost pharaohs. And now, he had betrayed him. Imhotep sighed, shaking his head. He is bound to the past. He does not see that we have entered a new world. Layla nodded. He believes you will be corrupted. That a soul transferred into a machine will lose its essence. Imhotep chuckled. Then he does not understand the nature of the soul at all. He turned back to the city, his mind racing. The old ways had served their purpose, but they were limiting. If Aknot and his followers stood in the way, they would have to be dealt with, swiftly, quietly. There was no place for sentiment in eternity. The order must be purified, Imhotep said finally. Aknot's time has ended. Layla hesitated again. He will not go quietly. Imhotep smiled. They never do. The underground sanctum was ancient, hidden beneath the shifting sands of Giza. The torches burned low, casting shadows across the great stone chamber where Aknot and his followers knelt in a circle. The old high priest's voice echoed through the catacombs, chanting words as old as time itself. We call upon the first ritual, the rite of binding. Imhotep has forsaken the gods. He seeks to become something unnatural. The disciples murmured in agreement. They had served their master for thousands of years, guiding his rebirths, protecting his knowledge. But this was blasphemy. Aknot's voice grew stronger. If he does not see his mistake, then we must show him. If he will not listen, then we must take action. A figure stepped from the shadows. You never could let go of the past, could you, old friend? The disciples turned, eyes wide. Imhotep stood among them. He wore no robe of the priesthood, no headdress of the old gods. He was dressed in the modern world's uniform, a dark coat, simple, elegant. Yet his presence was undeniable. Aknot rose slowly, his expression unreadable. You should not be here. Imhotep took a step forward. And yet I am. The room grew silent. The torches flickered. Imhotep's voice was calm, measured, yet laced with something deeper, something ancient. You think me a fool, Aknot? He asked softly. That I do not see the limits of the flesh? That I do not understand what must be done? Aknot's jaw tightened. The soul was not meant for metal and circuits. Imhotep smirked. And yet it was not meant for dust and decay either. We have walked this world for thousands of years, and you still wish to play in the sand. Aknot raised a hand, and the disciples around him tensed. Some clutched relics of power, others whispered incantations. Imhotep sighed. Do you mean to fight me, old friend? Aknot's eyes darkened. If I must. Imhotep smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Then you have already lost. The betrayal was dealt with swiftly. The old guard of the order had clung to their traditions, but tradition was not power, progress was. By morning, the sanctum beneath Giza was silent. The torches had been extinguished. The old ways had died in the dark, and the new era had begun. Imhotep stood at the edge of the Nile, watching the sunrise paint the sky in gold and crimson. Layla stood beside him, waiting. It is done? She asked. He nodded. The last resistance is gone. She exhaled. Then we move forward. Imhotep turned to her, his expression unreadable. Prepare the machine. The next transition will not be into flesh. Layla's breath caught. It was happening. The neural transfer. The birth of the first true digital god. The moment he had been waiting for since the beginning of time. And the world had no idea what was coming.